I wanted to help people all over the country, all over the world, wherever I'm at on my phone.
If we're being honest, most people just want to know, how much do I got to pay?
There would be a large group of people that would be
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Key Leads Media Podcast. I am a founder and host and realtor, much like many of you out there. And today we got a special guest. We're here today with Jonathan Camacho, and I definitely want you guys to hear from him because he's the guy who makes sure these projects, these houses that you want to buy, these investment properties, these buildings that are getting built, he's the guy that makes sure that gets done because he's the one funding it, or going out and putting a team together of people who can fund these types of deals. And these aren't simple deals all the time. Sometimes they're intricate. Sometimes you need a lot of people working in tandem to get something done. And this is going to be the connect for that. So very, very happy to have him. I learn every time I get to sit down with a lender and someone who controls how the money flows for these different deals, because me as a realtor, I depend on them and they depend on me to, bring them people who want to do these deals. So we're working together, and I'm glad that we met recently, because had we not, this wouldn't have been happening today. And that was a function of me just going out because somebody asked me to go to a networking event. So you never know who you're going to meet, and you definitely don't know if you're going to be able to get him on the podcast, but I'm thankful that he's here today. And yeah, without further ado, Jonathan, I just want to say welcome, and go ahead and tell the people who you are.
Thank you, Malik. I really appreciate it, man. I'm very glad I went to that networking event as well. Also, same situation. I got invited. And then I'm very glad that I ran into somebody like yourself. It's always good to meet with realtors and people that are in the same field. And so I'm on the financing side. I'm a loan officer. I work on a team where we structure loans, try to make it more efficient for all of our buyers, and we try to make it the simplest way possible. Then that comes a lot of just kind of structuring it in a way where they are putting the least amount down. Communication is key, making sure that they understand what they're putting down, what is going to be on the table, and the long-term effects of the loan and the terms. So when it comes to financing, I know a lot of times people think that you have to put 20% down, or they have to, for example, have the perfect credit score. I come from an immigrant background where, the financing side was always something very tricky. So I'm very happy that I'm in this field now and I can help people like my family and the people around me where, we can kind of guide them through the process step by step. So a lot of it is kind of just explaining them, from initial phone call to their keys. And I'm very glad that I can be around realtors that can make that process very simple as well.
Absolutely.
So, I think going to those networking events and finding people that you can relate to and have things in common, it's important, because the people that, for a lot of people, buying their property, it's the most important decision of their life.
Yeah.
So we can be there and make it seem seamless. That's always the goal.
Absolutely. And you hit on something that gets me into kind of the first question, like how did you get into it, or what led you to it? And similar to you, obviously, 07, 08, 09 kind of market crash, housing market thing, I was displaced, me and my father. So that kind of, I think, is what kind of led me to even gravitate towards this space. I didn't even anticipate being an agent, let alone shooting video and stuff for agents and building a media company around real estate. But tell me a little bit about how you got into it, because you said just being there, for your loved ones, your friends and family, helping them walk through that process, coming from an immigrant background. Like, talk to me about why it was important, or I guess what led you to this.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think I always was curious about real estate. My dad was the one that introduced me, just because I was always helping him out. He was a contractor, so he'd be pulling up to the houses, doing things like the AC, just working everything that he possibly could, right? Came here, 18 years old, didn't know anything of English, traveled around, and he decided that, he wanted to work for people in Las Olas, people people that had a lot of houses where he could benefit and teach them and do the contracting, for example. The biggest thing for me was, I look at these houses, I look at these cars, I look at, these pools, these yachts, and I'm like, Dad, what does this guy do for work? And my dad would just be like, real estate. So I'm like, what does that even mean? Is he a realtor? Is he just, what aspect of it? And I knew I had to find out. So that was always my curiosity. And my dad pretty much had a mentor where we actually, the first property that I remember visiting was down here in Las Olas, $25 million, and one of the nicest places down here in Aqua Vista. And I just remember thinking that, wow, like something got him to this? You know, what got him there? Because there's other people that, you know, are living paycheck to paycheck and they're struggling and they maybe don't have the exact route to get there. And I always, just being in those rooms, it made me realize that real estate was the key. You know, real estate has had maybe one bad year in 2008. Besides that, it's always been on the up end. It's always been on the come up. So when I decided that I wanted to get into real estate, I was just kind of interested in what aspect I was going to go into. I was thinking about becoming a realtor, but I ended up going to college. COVID hit, and I came back down to Fort Lauderdale, and I started working in a restaurant, started bartending. And then one day I got very lucky. This gentleman came in with his wife. It was like a Wednesday, like 3:30. They started ordering margaritas, and I'm
Wednesday at 3:30. Like, who are you?
I'm like, brother, what do you do, man? I was just curious. You know, pulled out the black Amex, the Rolex. You know, he looks super young.
For y'all that don't know, the black Amex is the one that make different sounds when they hit the table. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a little bit heavier.
Definitely. So I was just curious, and I asked him. I went out of my way. I told him I knew I was going to ask him before he left, what did he do for work? And I asked, he had a shirt that said mortgages, and I was like, hey boss, is this your own company? You know, I've always been really curious about real estate. I have a Airbnb that I've bought in Colombia. I've been, you know, managing an Airbnb, but I've always just been curious as to more aspects of real estate. And he looked me up and down, and he was like, yeah, this is my own business. Follow me on Instagram. Little did I know that conversation was going to lead into my career. The biggest thing that I took from that was that you just have to ask. And if you think it's the universe, think it's God, whatever you believe in, you have to ask the universe. Because I always knew I wanted to get into real estate, but I didn't know how. I knew I wanted to be able to work from anywhere. I knew I wanted to help people all over the country, all over the world, wherever I'm at on my phone. And God created this job for me, because that's how I got introduced to mortgages. Flash forward 2 weeks later, I'm training, I'm getting, you know, we're going over loan programs, we're going over the process, and that was me as a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And then after that, you know, kept working with him, and I've been very blessed to work under some of the most amazing loan officers in all of the U.S. With him, he was a mortgage broker. We got introduced to be, it was a small brokerage from Florida and New York. So I learned very hands-on, structuring the deals, structuring the pre-approvals very early on. And I got very lucky because I was working with his Spanish buyers. I was the only Spanish-speaking LO on his team. It was pretty much just me and him on the team too. So a lot of it was me learning hands-on. And I was very blessed to work with somebody that was doing very well in the business. You know, he was funding around 40 million a year in funded loans.
Jeez.
So it was a lot to work with. And then after that, I continued to work in mortgages, but I had a curiosity for different loan programs for even more. And I'm even more blessed now to meet my current branch manager, Ricardo Carrillo. He funded 100 million last year in funded loans. So me being on his team, I learned absolutely everything about investment properties, non-QM programs, which that means, you know, products that aren't conventional or FHA, just tailored more to investor-friendly loans, and just a different bracket of financing, where their loan structuring is a little different because they have so many things that they need to organize. They want to go with a loan officer that can replicate that process seamlessly, right? These are portfolios that have 10, 15 properties. So when it comes to that, that's a very different process than having somebody buy their first property.
Right.
But it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and I've been very blessed, very glad that I've been in the right rooms and asked the right questions. You know, even with my last branch manager, it all happened from an Instagram follow, from a swipe up.
Oh, wow.
One fire emoji here, one emoji. Hey man,
yeah.
If you're in Miami, let's get a workout in.
Yeah.
And that was another life changing question for me. So very happy about that as well.
I want to talk a little bit deeper about that. Just like you said, you got to ask, you got to put yourself out there. It seems like you have some really great mentors. Two things, right? First thing is you mentioned non-QM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's non-qualifying mortgages,
yes.
Right? So let's talk to the people a little bit more about that, because like you said, these are portfolios that people are going to buy. They're putting the money together, whether there's multiple different lenders, et cetera. And then also I want to talk, after you talk about like kind of how those things work, because you got a lot of people out here that maybe don't want to go to a bank, or maybe they can't because they don't have personal credit, but they got business credit because they're playing the game that way, and they're trying to, decrease their tax burden. So a lot of their money stays within their enterprises, right? So we're talking to a specific group of people that you already know how to service. I have no idea about how the back end of mortgages work from a standpoint of even how you guys get paid, right? Like how you get paid on certain mortgages and stuff. All I know is that, hey, I got to call you. I need them to be approved. I need to make sure this deal is going to go through, and tell me if we need to ask for concessions.
Definitely.
After that, I'm just kind of like lost, and I want to learn a little bit more because I thought about potentially having both the real estate license and the mortgage license. I know some people do, but then people say it's frowned upon. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, do I really want to go down that path? So if you're talking to someone who doesn't know, that wants to know a little bit about mortgages, kind of like how you used to, want to get into the game and then got into it, talk to me as if I'm you at that point about, like, what it even means to, go into this business, starting with non-QM, because that's a lot of what happens down here.
1,000%. And I think you hit it right on the point where I think what we really want to focus on is we're in the service game, right? We want to service our clients the best way possible. For me, I'm constantly working around realtors, and I'm curious as to how they structure their deals as well, right? Because they're on the negotiation side, they're the front runner on that. And I always like to tell them, put me in, right? Help me structure the deal with you, because I want to be able to, talk about seller credits, get everything possible for your clients, right? So being licensed on the mortgage side would be very beneficial for you as well. Why? Because you have access to potentially, depending on which brokerage or which lender you go with. So that's probably the biggest thing, right? Educating yourself on if you want to go with a direct lender or if you want to go with a mortgage brokerage. A direct lender, yeah, exactly. So a direct lender, let's put it simply, it's the bank, it's Chase. A mortgage brokerage, what they do is they structure your file, they write your loan, and they shop it to different lenders. So they have different options as to what you qualify for, what rates. A direct lender can price their own, but it's mostly on what they have available, what programs, what overlays they have available. And overlays, for example, are what a loan needs to go through on one certain bank. For example, there's certain guidelines for FHA and conventional, but an overlay is what exactly that specific bank is going to permit to pass. When you go with the mortgage brokerage route, you have different overlays. You have a broker can shop around what the best rate is available for you, right? The good thing about my specific branch is we do both. So we have access to both being a direct lender, and we can also have relationships with over 50 different banks that have the best rates available. Right. And those fall under the non-QM and the DSCR deals. So those are the biggest ones that I would want to talk about, especially DSCR. What we always try to tell our clients is to exercise conventional financing because it has the best rates possible. Right. A really important one is the second home loan, right? A conventional 10% down second home loan. So usually as a primary, you can go 3% down if it's your first time buying, or usually we try to push them maybe to go 5, just so that monthly payment can look a little better as well. Yeah. But we want to exercise conventional financing first. Once people start adding 3 or 4 or 5 loans into their DTI, into their portfolio, that's when it gets a little tricky. And we tend to recommend the DSCR route. DSCR is a debt coverage service ratio loan. So that means that the bank is looking at if the property is going to cash flow instead of your personal assets, your personal income. So if you take a look at a property and it's a fourplex and it's bringing in revenue, it's not going to necessarily look at how many properties you have. What they do look at is if you have investor experience. If you have investor experience, that can that changes the rate, and it also changes the down payment. It can go from 30 to 25 to even 20%. So those 2 loans are the biggest ones that I would want to, have you recommend your investors. But when it comes to getting licensed on the realtor side, I would definitely recommend it. Why? Because you're just adding knowledge to your clients where you can service them in a better way. Just because even if you know the regulations, even if you know what other loan programs are available, right? A lender can say, no, let's not go this route, let's do this route. And you can come in and say, well, why don't we do this? What if they qualify for a DSCR deal? Maybe a lender that you work with doesn't have them. They only do conventional FHA. that would be a disservice to your client if they didn't know about that. So I'm always an advocate for educating and learning about everything that we can, because in real estate, you never really know what you don't know until you ask the questions. So there comes a lot of times where I'm talking to a client and I'm taking notes of their specific portfolio and then shopping it around, seeing what would be a best loan structure or what would be the best way to get it through an underwriter.
Yeah.
I'm just educating myself. I think that's always something that I'm thinking about getting my realtor license as well. So.
For sure. No, I definitely, and then to pivot from that, because you just gave me a thought when you talk about that, I think about, like you said, just understanding and adding to your knowledge base, adding to your tool belt, so to speak. It's kind of like when you're in school, you know, you take math 1, then math 2, then math 3, and then eventually you're in calculus.
Yeah.
Right? So as you pick up just the different principles of algebra and, you know, how fractions are divided and multiplied, and then also just log functions on the scientific calculator, you learn all these different things for different types of problems. When I look at real estate, and this maybe just be me, might just be me, and, you know, as I zoom out and literally just hit me just now talking to you, it's kind of like, all right, well, why wouldn't I go get the you know, loan
100%.
officer license? Even if I don't do it, I have the knowledge base. And if I have the knowledge base, I'm that much more of an expert. And then to pivot to the next point, which is more on content, like why content is important. If we're being honest, most people just want to know, how much do I got to pay?
Yeah.
Like, how much do I got to come up with? How does the money work? Is there a way for me to make more money doing this? Am I going to be secure? Because money is not everything, but it's a very important thing,
100%.
right? So when you understand the finance piece and you can speak to it, it's definitely a lot easier to get eyeballs when you know how to take the actual knowledge base of the finance piece and then come to social media and say, hey, this is what this looks like. When you see this house, this is what you see. When I see this house, this is what I see. And then you break down the numbers. And people kind of understand, like, oh, there's a way to do this. I need to talk to that guy. So speak to me a little bit more about like content, where you are in terms of your thoughts on branding and marketing from a content standpoint, because this is Key Leads Media.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. No, the great question. When it comes to content, when it comes to this business, it's not necessarily a sales job, but you're selling yourself, right? We're the service. So if we understand, like everything in sales, you have to know the product. If you understand, if you see a house and you look at it differently, maybe you're not talking about how many rooms, the square footage, the pool, the jacuzzi, but you're talking about what it is exactly that you need to finance it and to get the keys for it. That's huge for a client. Of course, the more you know, the more you understand every single aspect of the transaction, you're going to be able to sell it easier. If you come into an open house and you're talking about exactly what they need to qualify, what they need to put down, what's going to be their ideal monthly payment, what they're going to be happy at while you're showing them the property, they're going to love that. They're going to love that because a lot of times, and you can tell me about this on the realtor side, a lot of times you're showing somebody a property that maybe you don't know if they can afford. If they're not pre-approved yet, you know, that's something.
You try not to show them if they're not pre-approved, but people slip through the cracks. I mean, you got friends and families that want to, you know, come and look at things.
And also you don't know what other pre-approvals are looking like too.
Yeah.
A lot of times maybe something slipped through the track, you do a hard pull on their credit, and then now you're looking at a completely different loan.
Yeah, I mean, even with selling homes, right? Because when you start looking at, you know, calling you guys back and saying, hey, you know, I want to sell this home, what's my payoff? Like running into things like you looking at the statement and you only see what the principal is and you think that might be a payoff, but there might be things that happened on the back end, deferred payments or past due interest that's accumulated for payments that you didn't pay on time or something like that.
1,000%.
And now that takes your payoff up. So takes your payoff up, and now, you know, you got to wonder if you priced the home correctly. So that's something that, you know, if you're a realtor, definitely want to get that payoff before you list the home. So you can know exactly what you need to list it at for them to walk away with whatever money they want to walk away with, or have that conversation about, hey, you're probably not going to walk away with this much. If you want to wait and list it a little bit further down the line where you can walk away, make a couple more mortgage payments, cool. Or we can list it now and then just go from there.
Yeah, of course. The transparency is super important. So the more you know about it, the absolute better, right? So that's why I would say when you understand both aspects of it on the realtor side, and that's why I'm always very curious to work with realtors like yourself, because somebody that thinks about those things, that's something that I want to have somebody that I can refer my client to and them be in good hands, and vice versa.
For sure. So we started this podcast, even this company, everything, right? Founded by me, and I'm a fellow realtor like many of you watching, to highlight realtors first and real estate professionals as well, right? Just everything in the real estate space. Maybe we'll branch out as we go. We do work on other things, but the main goal is to make sure that people like you and I have a voice and we put our brand out there. So talk to me a little bit about, your brand. Talk to me a little bit more about what exactly you stand for, and when you show up in an event and you're on a podcast like this, or you're making anything for your socials, what are you trying to get out there to your audience? Like, who do you want them to see you as? Or how do you want them to see you?
Yeah, I always, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm very blessed to be in the position that I am. Why? Because I come from an immigrant background. I come from somebody that maybe didn't have the opportunities, but I came to this country and I knew that my parents worked their butts off for me to be put in this position where I can do a service that I'm not only helping people, but I'm also helping my own portfolio. I'm helping myself and my family grow. And I love the type of service that I'm in. It doesn't feel like a sales job. Why? Because what am I doing? The satisfaction when somebody tells me, Jonathan, you just helped me buy my first house. We just got the keys today. Thank you so much, brother. Like those are the things that that's why I love what I do. And above that, it's a process, because especially working with the Spanish community, it's hard. It's hard. People are scared to give away their social security, right? Yeah. That's something that people, are hesitant to do, look at their finances. So me being somebody that I can relate to them and I can help them, guide them through the process step by step, because I've done it so many times and I've done it for people that didn't think that they could do it. That's the most rewarding feeling. So the question that you had asked me before, where, when you walk into a room, what do you want to portray? I want to portray somebody that can help, and that they can relate to, and that I have a mindset as the more I give, the more everybody gets, because it's not just for me, it's for them. It's such a rewarding feeling seeing somebody, get that text where they just come inside the house, they got the first lock in, and so it's always a very rewarding feeling. And the relationships that I've made through real estate, I'm so thankful for. This is a business that I wanted to continue to be in, and I'm so glad that I am in this aspect of it where I'm not in an office. Yeah. I'm a loan officer that can work anywhere over the world. And I'm very thankful to be on a team where, we rely on each other, we're young, we're hungry, we're creating generational wealth for each other. And that's what I want to portray for my clients. That's the goal for everybody, right? It's not just a one-time transaction. We're creating a relationship where we're breaking bread with our friends and we're continuing to grow their portfolio, answer their questions, be available. A deal comes up where I have a pre-approval that it aligns perfectly for. Look, here's an easy deal for you. This is something that not people that in my country didn't have access to this. So I'm very happy that everything has led to where I'm at today. But I'm very excited for what's coming.
The goal of this is to put your brand out there so people know you, like you, trust you. I think they know you now. I hope they like you. And I'm pretty sure they trust you, you know what I'm saying? Because you do have a passion in your voice that I can hear, and I hope that they can hear it as well. So the final question is, if you weren't doing what you do, what would other people be missing out on? Like, hey, Jonathan isn't doing this, so we're missing these intangibles when it comes to, getting a loan to buy a home.
There would be a large group of people that would be thinking that there's only one way to buy a house. There would be a large percentage of people that don't have the luxury of knowing certain things about how to buy a house. The big banks would be winning. People would be going to Chase, paying whatever Chase wants them to, whatever Wells Fargo wants them to. The biggest thing about where I'm at right now is that I have an access to over 100 banks, and the team that I work on is top service in every aspect. As far as paying the least amount down, it's just a service that they can generate so much more than just one property. They can build wealth through a team of people that are servicing them. So I would say you're not going to get this type of service out of just another lender, out of just another bank. This isn't something that I speak lightly of, because this is a team that I've seen it firsthand. One property turn into a portfolio, multifamily. So to sum it up in one sentence, I would say you'd be missing out on generational wealth.
For sure, man, for sure. And I heard generational wealth, I heard equity, I heard competition to make sure that you're treated in a fashion where you matter as someone going to get the loan to buy that home, and just basically an opportunity for you to do what you want to do for your family and live your life in a way that's on the path to prosperity. That's what I hear. So, man, look, we appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we met last week, and for you to come do this, it means a lot to me, because it means that our conversation went further than maybe both of us thought it would when we shook hands at the event. But yeah, man, I really appreciate it. It does a lot for the platform to bring people that really care and are, passionate about what they do, serious about what they do, and professional about what they do. And it's not all the fluff stuff that kind of goes viral all the time.
Yeah.
But these moments, these conversations are establishing pieces of your brand. And even as you go further and become more successful, this moment matters, because this is something in the archives that shows that you have been doing this, and it solidifies your footprint in the space that you're in. So I appreciate you coming on. And look, man, this is the Key Leads Media Podcast, where we bring on professionals that really love what they do in the real estate space. I'm Malik Mayweather, your founder and fellow realtor, and we appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.